Well, hey there, Goodwill Church family. Pastor Josh here on this beautiful Friday. We're looking forward to some time talking to you about something that is vitally important right now. And so I've brought along my dear friend and colleague, our Director of Operations, Mike Antinucci. And what we're going to be talking about today is how can we respond in a biblical way, in a Christian way, to the situation that we're in as it pertains to our finances. And I know that immediately whenever there's a conversation of church and finances, there's a little bit of kind of a struggle, but I want to help you with that today. Part of the reason I want to help you with that is, one, because biblically, there is a wide array of different counsel in the Old and New Testament about how directly connected the manner in which we steward our money is connected to our spirituality. And so for us to neglect the area of finances, the area of stewardship, is to actually neglect the command to preach the whole counsel of God. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Mike and I both have substantial backgrounds in this arena, so it's very comfortable for us to be able to talk about this without any kind of weird stuff. We do not gain any financial benefit from this conversation today. The purpose of this is to utilize what we've learned in literally decades of working in and around financial management to be able to assist for you to be going through what you're going through right now, in particular as it pertains to personal financial management. And that is an area that we both have a substantial background in. My background in that is that since 1996, I have been a financial advisor, and so I am fully licensed, fully credentialed, and have nearly 25 years of experience in the industry. And so before that, I was working in assorted realms of financial management. So really, since I graduated from college in December of 1994, I've been working in this area. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Yours is unique, and so tell us where you approach this from.
Well, I first started really, I was in the same boat as many people, wondering, my finances, how come I never have money, or how come I don't know where it's all going? So then I started getting into reading some books and realizing, there's got to be a better way to manage money because we're really not taught it. So it all started with me, looking in and learning about Dave Ramsey. And figuring, okay, let me hear what this guy has to say. Started reading some of his books, and then I attended my first Financial Peace University class. Back in 1999, and I was hooked. I'm like, man, this is going to be great. And we went through the principles, and Michelle and I, we rocked it, and we realized, wow, this stuff, though it's basic, it really, really works. So then I started leading Financial Peace University, and she's been doing that since 20 years now. And yeah, time flies. And I really started coaching a lot of people through this process as they attended Financial Peace University. And then Michelle would get on me and say, why don't you just become a coach? And I said, yeah, well, you know what? You can't become a Dave Ramsey coach and be in debt, right? So once we got past the debt part, she was like, it's time. Why don't you go? So I went to Dave Ramsey's organization, became one of his coaches. And it's just one of those things where you got to help people. And personal finances is not an easy path. It looks easy, but it's not. And so I've been coaching for years now, and I love helping people and getting them on track.
Yeah. So you have been, at this, remember the old commercial, I'm not only the hair club president, I'm also a member. You're not just somebody that teaches this stuff, you're somebody that lives that.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of how we approach this today is, we're not here to teach from a standpoint of, hey, do this. This is what we've implemented in our lives. I would not be who I am had I not learned to tithe at an early age and put God first in that. And so there's a variety of different principles that are scripturally based that we can leverage to find not just financial freedom, but spiritual synergy, because it's difficult to be spiritually free when we're not financially free. And that really is kind of the essence of this. So Why don't you kind of lead us into this? The purpose of this
Okay.
is really for me to interview you and for you to kind of give us what you have and your best practices for personal finance. Now, let me set the table for us. We have a situation where there's a wide array of different people that are listening to this interview. There's people who, nothing's really changed in their lives. They're still working. They're still garnering an income. They're still managing their finances as they were prior to the quarantine of COVID-19. But then there's also people where their income has been greatly reduced, and maybe they've lost a job, maybe they're on unemployment right now, and they're kind of scrambling to get up to speed with personal financial management. So can you help us with that? Can you kind of start with the basics and help us to understand the building blocks and foundation of personal financial management?
Sure, absolutely. Really, the toughest part, Josh, is the communication part. Finances are very personal, and you would think as a married couple that, we'll talk about anything, and they will, except for finances. I get it, because I've been there. I was always afraid, oh geez, what are they going to say? Michelle would come out and say, hey, where's all our money going? I'm sure everybody's had that conversation. So the communication part is tough. It makes it kind of tougher too, because we're all quarantined together. And I'm sure there's some folks where, maybe they need that break, and now we're gonna ask them to talk about money. So really, so the communication part is probably the toughest hurdle. But once we get that talk going and really say, okay, how are we gonna do this? The first part is to get on a cash flow plan. Whether the first scenario you gave, hey, your finances really haven't changed that much. Things are going kind of fine, but you've realized, hey, we haven't been spending a lot of money. And some of them are probably surprised that, wow, we have a lot of money sitting in the account left over. How come? And that's just identifying, really, because we don't have a cash flow plan. There's no plan. We just kind of spend it as it comes, whether we live paycheck to paycheck or not. So for those that their income hasn't changed, or everything nothing's changed but the spending, a cash flow plan this is a great opportunity to do it. And we say cash flow plan. Some people call it a budget. People get scared of the name budget. It's really not that scary.
Yeah.
And so now is a great time to sit down and fill out the forms. And I have an Excel spreadsheet that if anybody wants, they can certainly reach out to me, and I'll send them the form just to kind of help them get started. But to get all their stuff on paper. I recommend paper at first, because it kind of helps you put things down. And then if you want to go to an app, there's a lot of great apps out there for budgeting. And get it all and put out there and see where all your expenses are going, and really kind of take control of your money. And those that are going through a financial hardship right now, now is probably the best time, if you don't already do it, to get on a cash flow plan, because your cash flow is either stopped or it's limited. If you're collecting unemployment, if you're a small business owner and you received a loan and you have this money coming in, now more than ever, it's so important to track every cent that you have coming in. You work hard for that. You've worked hard for that. And we need to prioritize really what needs to be paid. So the first step of all of that is to get this cash flow plan going. And if they call the church, I would love to help them get started on that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing, Mike, because I think a lot of people, I think you're right about the word budget. I think it's, it's the B word in most households when they're talking about kind of how we navigate how cash is spent. But the other piece is, we realize, maybe we don't realize, every dollar goes somewhere, and so it would be good to know where those dollars go, because we work so hard to get those dollars. Yep. To not know where they're going, not know where they're appropriated seems, kind of frustrating. I think there's a lot of people, probably, if your experience is like mine, where you're just so busy in life that really sitting down and having a plan about your finances feels cumbersome, because maybe there's people out there, they just don't feel like they have the resources, meaning the knowledge to do this. But then there's also just the time factor. Like it takes intentional time to track where I'm spending. And so, whether, and you mentioned married couples, for any folks that are listening that aren't married, the conversation of, kind of getting on the same page with regard to how money is spent is a conversation that you get to skip, but you still have to be honest with yourself. Right. And that's a hard thing, is being honest with yourself, because you say, wow, I have to go buy that Starbucks venti every morning to get my day started. But then you see at the end of the month how much that venti costs you, quantified in a month. And then you start having, the conversation with yourself, like, do I really need that? Do you really need that?
Right.
I think part of this is just being honest. And some of us don't really want to be honest with how we're spending our money, because we know that maybe we struggle with that. And so help us through the understanding of how we take, okay, I need to do this. Now is the time to do this, right? There's never been a better time, more important for us to really look at it. How do we actually bring that to fruition?
Well, you touched, it was great because you touched on it, and I get excited talking about this stuff because I've been there. A lot of the folks that I've coached in the past or kind of walked them through this, a lot of times, we have no idea where our money's going.
Right.
And that's scary. I've been there. I understand it, but it's scary to think that, hey, like you said, we work so hard and we have no idea where our money's going. So one of the exercises that I give all my clients and the folks that I help is go into your bank account, get your 3 to 6 months of bank statements, depending on how motivated they are, right? And start categorizing and highlighting where your money's going. And if you're a couple with 2 accounts, like he's got his, she's got hers, my advice is, time to come together. You're married. Let's have everything together. But that's for another video. That's marriage counseling. No, but is go through it and start highlighting all those areas, and you'll probably get queasy doing that, because, like you say, it pulls our heads out of the sand, because we have money. The bank says we have $100. We get in that mode of, hey, we have $100 to spend, instead of saying, hey, we made it through and had $100 left over to save.
Right.
We don't think like that. We have to really kind of reprogram it. So you go through your bank statements and you highlight all this stuff, and that tells you straight up what is important to you with spending your money, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
You talk about coffee. It could be, how many Amazon purchases have there been that come out of your checking account and or credit card, and then what did you buy? And it'd be a huge eye opener for folks, and that's a great exercise to do, because as you're doing your cash flow plan and you have to fill in all those categories, well, how much do we spend on groceries? How much do we spend on cell phones? How much do we spend on clothing? All those little items will help identify that. And like you said, you want that budget to be zero on the end, because we want to do a zero-based budget, meaning we give every dollar a home.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you do that, you realize the end number has a negative sign in front of it.
Yeah.
That's the scary part. But so that's one of the great exercises I love to do to have folks and that's, again, the scary part. And getting time to do it, you brought up a great point. You got to really plan for it. You can't say, honey, sit down, we're going to do it right now. Not going to work. You can say, hey, on Thursday evening, let's, when the kids go to bed, or if they're not there, like, ours, let's plan a time between 7 and 8, and we're going to slowly work on this. And then come to the agreement when you do this to say, okay, we're going to agree that if it starts to get heated, we're going to do a timeout, right? Because you don't want to turn into an eruption. It's not easy, folks. It is not easy to do in the beginning. But once you get through those barriers, it goes pretty good. So that's one of the first exercise that I tell them to do.
Yeah, one of the things that's been interesting during this quarantine time, Mike, is as households have kind of looked at their spending, there's a clearer line of delineation, isn't there, between wants and needs?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We've experienced that in such a profound way, whereby we realize that maybe some people are finding themselves with a little bit more money than they're used to having, because they're used to spending more because they're going out to eat, or they're eating lunch out every day at their job or something like that. And so it's interesting to me that there is a kind of an opportunity for us to look at what a need is versus our kind of arbitrary spending on wants. Can you talk about how to really craft this between wants and needs inside the four walls of your house? Because that's kind of what you're talking about. You're talking about your house, your household being a business, and you're running it like a business. You're looking at, this is how much we take in, this is how much we pay out. How can we take in more and pay out less? That's
absolutely.
We want to make sure that what we're taking in is more than what we're giving out. I mean, I can remember for years doing seminars with people, and I would start the seminar with this kind of talk that kind of grabbed their attention. I say, folks, today is going to be like unlike any other seminar that you've ever seen in your life. If you listen to the wisdom that I'm going to impart in the next minute, I promise you 100% that you will achieve financial success in your life. Are you ready for it? Here it is. Spend less than you make.
Amen. It's right.
And people are like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And so help us to understand how that happens in real time when we're looking at inside the four walls of our house. How do we craft something that helps us spend less than we make?
Sure. Well, again, everything goes back to that cash flow plan. But you're right. We have learned over the last month, 2 months here, what exactly we really don't need in our lives.
Yeah.
And what we can really do without. Haircuts are a big deal, right? Ooh, we need a haircut.
Really had to start.
Okay, that is a priority.
Had to start there, right? I'm starting to look like a chia pet, but I know some people don't have the problem of needing a haircut.
Right, absolutely. But you're right. What don't we need? So whether you're in a good financial position or right now you're hurting, understand completely you're hurting. The focus needs to really be on those four walls. So when you look at your finances, and you're right, we only get a certain amount of money. That's all we have. That's all we have to work for the month. We can't do any more. If you make it, it's illegal. You go to jail for it. But so those four walls are really simple. Is you need a roof over your head, right? So that's one of your walls, is your housing part. You need a home that includes all your utilities, because without it. Now, when I talk about utilities, I'm not talking about, well, it's tough during this time, because normally I would tell people, well, you don't need cable. You don't need certain these things. If you're trying to pull it in because your financial situation changed, well, you need to pull in the reins a little bit. It's almost like this time with what's going on, especially if you have children. I had a person tell me the other day, thank God for Hulu and Netflix. Because the kids would probably drive them, drive them crazy. But so you need your housing. You need food. Food's a priority. I had a meme that I posted not that long ago where it talked, this 000 food, $1,600 a month for food.
Yeah. Our current quarantine budget, right? The quarantine household budget.
Right, because we don't need anything else but food.
Yeah, I know most of us are getting 3 weeks to the gallon on gas now. So.
Right. Well, and right now the gas prices are getting so low, but nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah.
So you definitely, again, you need a roof over your head, and all that entails. You need food on the table. You need transportation. So your automobiles would be a priority on that. And another part of the four walls would be your clothes. That doesn't mean, hey, I can continue to get clothes from Amazon. I'm just talking about the bare necessities. And really that's overall, when you look at your housing or the four walls, you are talking about the bare necessities. Mm-hmm. So if you're financially okay, right, during this period of time, it's still okay to prioritize. And you just prioritize the four walls, and then you prioritize your bills and everything that comes after that. Yeah. If you're in a person who right now is like, Mike, I don't have the money to pay everything on my cash flow plan, then it's okay. Well, you need to put your focus on those four walls. And I had one client that she was paying her Visa bill but going hungry, and I'm like, that's not how we're supposed to do this. Yeah. So you prioritize. So back to that beginning, is this how much I make? right now coming in to, if it's really low, and this is what I can do. Eventually it's going to hit zero and you're going to have all these bills afterwards. Well, what do we do about that? Am I just supposed to turn my phone off and ignore that? I can't pay it. You can't pay it. What I would normally tell people about that is, okay, well, pay what you can, focusing on those four walls, because that's what you need to take care of your family first. And then the bills that come after that, I'm not a person to tell anybody, just don't pick up the phone. I don't think that's right. We had signed that paperwork that says I am obligated to pay you.
That's right.
But if you're unable to pay them, you are still obligated, in my opinion, to let them know, to communicate with them and let them know your situation. Some of them they're not nice people. And don't take it personally. It's not personal to them. It's just business to make you feel bad, but don't. You're in a situation now that is, dare I say, because the word's been used unbelievably, is unprecedented.
Yeah.
But inform them, let them know. I think the majority of them will understand, and just let them listen. I'm not saying I'm not going to pay it. Just right now, I can't. And my plan is, once I'm back to work or once things start flowing again, I'm going to get back on track. So that's a huge thing for me is letting people know that don't ignore them, talk to them. Now, if any of them get nasty, you can just say, hi, I'm working on it. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye-bye. You don't have to sit there and take it, I guess, is what I'm going to say there.
Yeah. I think, Mike, now is kind of, in light of the times that we live in, now is a time that I've found most companies, in my conversations with people, that most companies are more than willing to work with us. And so that's a vitally important thing. So there's relief from many mortgage companies. There's relief from car loans. There's relief from this. And you have to be very careful with that, because there are some that are saying, oh, we'll give you 3 months, but then at the end of 3 months, you have to pay all 3 months.
All of it, you're right.
So you have to be very, very careful. You have to understand the details. But now is a great time to call. If you have a credit card that has a high interest rate, now's a great time to call and negotiate that interest rates down.
Absolutely.
The Fed lowered rates to basically zero. And so now's a great time to leverage that and call up your credit card company and say, hey, you've been charging me 15% and the Fed funds rate is at zero. You should bring me down to 9%, and see what they're willing to work with, because they want to keep your business. That's great advice.
Great advice, Josh.
I think that the challenge is, what do we do when we don't know what to pay? How do we rack and stack what's most important? And I think that the counsel that you've given us today is really good. So one of the things that this all got me thinking about was the story that the pandemic that we're experiencing right now makes me think of the story of Joseph. And if you know about the story of Joseph, all the stuff in his life, it was just terrible stuff, but he ends up ascending to being basically Pharaoh's right-hand man in Egypt. And Pharaoh has this dream, and he interprets the dream, and he basically says there's going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. And he prepares Pharaoh, and he basically is in charge of the surplus storage of the 7 years of plenty, so that he is in charge of the distribution of that in the 7 years of famine. That got me thinking about this idea. We always have this conversation about an emergency fund. Talk to us about what that looks like and how that can help us in times like this.
Sure. Great. Yeah, I love that. I love that story. The very first emergency fund, right, Joseph?
Yeah.
And having an emergency fund, especially in a case like this. Now, I know folks that have. Let me back up a little bit. So, what is an emergency fund? Emergency fund is not, hey, Mike, I'm taking my entire paycheck and I'm putting it away because I may need to buy a car. A car is not an emergency fund. An emergency fund is exactly what it is. It's an emergency. And normally, as I counsel people, we go through the different steps. And after they get out of their debt, they have an emergency fund. I like to say, get at least $1,000 in there. That'll cover you through maybe a couple days of power outages or stuff like that. But eventually, as we go through the process of getting that debt taken care of and all that, I tell people 3 to 6 months of living expenses. And that's kind of what we learned with the 4 walls right now, is you're learning, what do I absolutely need to get me through what I'm going through, just the necessities. So imagine if you would have saved 3 to 6 months of your living expenses. That's utilities, mortgage, auto, all that stuff, all those four walls combined, and had that sitting in here. Well, during this time, those that have been able to do something like that, if they were both to be laid off or lose their jobs, they have money in there to survive 3 to 6 months. And that gives them a little breathing room, and it takes such a huge weight off your shoulders of worry and fear that this kind of pandemic puts into people, especially when you start pulling back on finances or income anyway. That fear and anxiety kicks in like no other, especially as men. I think, and I'm not taking away any, but, we feel like we have to be the ones to provide. And when that doesn't happen, we take it very personal. We don't like to share that with our spouses, which, number one is don't do that. They're your spouse for a reason. Bring them in and let them know how you're feeling. But having that emergency fund is just takes that away for that period of time. And it gives you an opportunity to work out a plan from there.
Yeah. So if you're, we've kind of talked about some of the strategies to get prepared. People are finding themselves in the middle of all of this, that they want to implement some of those strategies. Kind of what's your thought, whether income has changed or not, kind of what's your counsel to people in the midst of all of this uncertainty? Because whether your income has changed or it hasn't, you're feeling anxiety. There's anxiety of what the future of this is going to be, how long this is going to be, of what the impact is going to be on a macro level to the world economy. I'm thinking about it, and like, you can't just shut down the economy and think you're going to start it back up again and everything's going to be fine. Everything will go back to normal. So, you got people looking, and even if they haven't lost their income, they're looking at their 401k, and now it's a 201k because they've lost a whole bunch of value, and they're
look at it.
Yeah,
just don't look at it.
What to do, and so there's just this general anxiety. Kind of as we land the plane today, what are some of the practical things that you would suggest for people in the midst of these times?
Sure. A lot of people are probably already there first, is they're in conserve mode.
Yeah.
Whether you have the finances coming in or not, everybody needs to be in this conserve mode, because we don't know what the future is going to hold.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, you got to have a plan, a written plan, whether it's just your notes, what you want to accomplish, what you need to accomplish. A written plan is that cash flow plan of, hey, let's get down and dirty. Let's use this have fun with it, without pointing fingers, because like I said, when you start looking through the bank statements, especially if they're separate, it's going to get scary.
Yeah. Well, that's why at the end, what we'll do is we'll give Pastor Jose's cell phone number. Right. Make sure that, if you're talking about money and it crosses over and it crosses the line into something difficult, you can just call Pastor Jose.
Absolutely.
He's going to love that I shared that.
Yeah, right.
But the truth of the matter is that a lot of times we avoid this topic because it is so painful. I mean, one of the main things that cause strife in relationships, and we're not just talking about marriages, we're talking about parent-child relationships, we're talking about roommate relationships, a plethora of different relationships. Money stresses that. Money puts strain on that. So it's good to point that out.
Yeah, it's so important. So have a plan. You know what? Take a deep breath. Give yourself some grace. Say, listen, if things that you were doing before kind of put you in a little bit of a mess financially, because we are I want it now type of a society, you're not alone. I saw a meme today, the Joneses are broke,
Yeah.
And one of my favorite commercials is, how do they do it? They're in debt up to their eyeballs. So people aren't alone. This is normal America. We're advertised like you wouldn't believe that, and buy this, new. So you're not alone. So take a deep breath, give yourself some grace. Get yourself on that cash flow plan, get a roadmap. Hey, where's this roadmap going? And if financially, if you go, we're doing pretty good, but like, Josh, we don't have a savings account. Well, part of that plan is maybe you start to load up that savings account, because you don't know what's going to happen, and it's good to have. if you're receiving unemployment right now, if you've gone through this, you were unemployed, you're receiving unemployment, and from my understanding is the way that federal government work in the states, you may be getting more than what your paycheck was right now. Mm-hmm. So you just can't look at that and go, hey, great, we have more money we can spend. We need to get out of that spending mentality and into the saving mentality. Is back to the basics. If you are receiving more money, my best advice to you right now is to save anything you possibly can.
That's right.
And I tell some folks, listen, get your first 1,000 or 500, depending on where you are. Put it in cash, put it in an envelope, put duct tape around it, shove it in a safe somewhere, and use that only for emergencies. Like I remember, I think it was Hurricane Sandy came in, took out all power or nothing. I had to tap into my envelope, which I hate to do, and get cash out because the local store in town, they had no power to run a card. You couldn't get money out of the ATM machines. Yeah. So I would say it's always good to have a little cash on hand. But don't just automatically think I can spend what I have coming in if you're collecting any of those benefits. Save as much as you can. And listen, this is, back to, no matter what your situation is, review your credit report. Don't worry about your credit score. Stop looking at that's a debt score. If you don't have debt, you don't have a score. So don't worry about that. But really, now is a great time to look at your credit report. As you're pulling those statements and reviewing everything, pull their credit reports. You don't have to pull all 4 now. You can go and pull one at a time, one every quarter, so you can look at it all year long if you want. Or if you feel like it, grab them all. And that way you can see what's out there that you have, that they have record of you on. And it's also good to make sure that by doing that, nobody else has used your identity either to open anything up.
That's right.
So if you haven't looked at your credit report, it's a great time to do it. And like I said, you try to make it as fun as possible. Get the reports coming in, grab the statements, plan some time, grade out, the chips or whatever you want to munch on and say, okay, honey, let's do this. If you're single, it's a great time to do it too. I would recommend if you're single, find an accountability partner, someone that's going to hold you to this. If you need that to be me, just call me. I'll be your accountability partner.
Yeah. That's great. We'll give Mike's contact information at the end of all of this. One of the things I just want to bust in on is, we talk a lot of times about the negative side of things. One of the things I love about Dave Ramsey's program, and you tout this very, very readily, is, as you succeed in paying down debt, as you succeed in hitting your emergency fund, as you succeed in, all these varieties of different kind of financial goals you have, celebrate along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's important for us to really take time because we want to enjoy this. This is the overflow of what God has entrusted us with. And so we want to be able to celebrate God entrusting us with that. And so
it's all his, Josh.
That's right.
All of it is his. We're just supposed to be good stewards of it. And one of the things I know when me and Michelle started doing this a long time ago, and we started going through and highlighting things, we were blown away on how much money we were wasting in food, meaning restaurants. Yeah. It was like, wow, because you don't realize it. And of course, you're in that position too. So if you and Denise say, hey, Mike, Michelle, let's go out to dinner. And if we didn't have the money for it, but hey, I'm stubborn. I got pride. Sure, we'll go out to eat, put on the credit card or figure out, I'll just move money here now and then the mortgage will wait, So more and more people do that. And because of the pride thing, instead of saying, hey, Josh, no can do, man. We want to get out of debt. We're going to rock this. And when we're debt free, we'll treat you to dinner.
Oh, nice. That sounds great, man. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was I'm like, man, that's awesome.
So yeah, we could do that. Yeah. But you're right. Is celebrate these successes. If you just get your cash flow plan down and it's zero and you guys look at it and you're excited, celebrate it. Put it on your refrigerator. If whatever goal you want, back to that planning stage, put it out there, and just focus on that and have a blast.
Yeah.
You'll get through the fights. There'll be some arguments, and everybody will want to do you could have or you should have. I just had a package come in the mail the other day, and Michelle was laughing like, well, what are you buying? I'm like, well, this was for the house. It's okay. But we still, we don't argue anymore about money, which is phenomenal because once you get past this point in a marriage, if you can talk about finances,
Yeah.
you can talk about anything.
You broke through a lot there. Yep.
Right. You really can.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we close, Mike, why don't you give some information about next steps for people?
Sure. Right. So the next steps are, the scariest, because now it's like, okay, we got to make a commitment to doing this. I'll let you guys know starting May 6th, I think it's May 6th, Wednesday. I'm going to do a virtual Financial Peace University class.
Nice.
It's my first one I've done virtual. I really haven't, I think about it, since I started working with the church, I haven't really had the opportunity to do an FPU. So I'm really excited about doing this. Because, I coach this as I go through the class and lead people through this class. I'm also coaching you. So I may give you a little bit more than you would if you just watched the class, because I'm going to be your coach through this. So that starts May 7th. I'll make sure we get it on the Facebook page of Goodwill, and I'll send a link out to folks so they can do that. And listen, I'm at the church. As members of Goodwill Church, if you have an issue or you have questions, feel free to give me a call. If you get a pad of paper right now, I'll give you my cell phone number. Maybe I shouldn't give my cell phone number, but I'm going to trust you that I give you my cell phone number.
Yeah.
So it's 845-527-8311. Or if you go on our webpage and find the staff, you'll see my email. Feel free to click on the email and shoot me an email, and I can send you the Excel version of a budget form. And again, answer any questions you have. So that's really your next step is to make that decision. It's time. And really this, like you said in the beginning, Josh, this is the perfect time to really look at your personal finances and go, okay, what are we doing? How do we change this? How do we control our money instead of our money controlling us?
Yeah, that's great. I want to close in prayer in just a moment, but I want to kind of paint a vision, a picture for this. We've had many, many conversations with folks who have managed their finances well, who have stewarded their money well, not just for a year or two, but for decades. And one of the things that frees you up to do is really acknowledge, like, hey, what I have belongs to God, and I want to use it for God. And so the church has been overwhelmed by not only the generosity of people continuing to give for the cause of the church, because realize that, the staff of the church and all the things that we're doing and all the work that we're doing is by staff, by people that are paid by the church. But then the other piece of this is that there is a grace fund that we have. And so what we've been doing is helping people out of the grace fund. We've been able to provide groceries. We've been able to provide needs of people out of the Grace Fund. And what really blessed me recently is I had somebody reach out and say, I got this stimulus check from the government. I mean, talk about a weird year, Mike, right? April 15th, we're not paying the government's paying us, right? Like, how strange is 2020? But anyway, the point that I would make is this person called, and it was a younger person, and they said, I don't need the stimulus check. I want it to go to someone who needs it. And I was just blown away by that. And so we informed them of the Grace Fund, and that money is specifically there for people who have demonstrated needs, and realize that it's not a bank where we just give money to people. We actually qualify their needs, and we're actually able to help the people that need help, as opposed to just giving out money to people who are scammers. And there's a lot of scammers out there.
Absolutely.
So I want to plant that with you, because you might be in a position to be able to support people in need. You might be in a financial state to be able to say, hey, we want to give $1,000 or $5,000 to the Grace Fund for people that are really hurting right now. They can contact you about that, Mike. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, Josh, because now these stimulus checks are coming out. I got a call 2 days ago, and someone wanted to give their stimulus check to people in need. What's the best course? I told them about the Grace Fund. I got an email this morning saying, Mike, I'm ready to do this. What is the best? Can I do this online? So what I did is I went into PushPay and created the Grace Fund link in PushPay that is linked directly to the Grace Fund account. And just so everybody knows, if you're familiar with it, the Grace Fund is what we call a restricted account. So if someone gives money to the Grace Fund, it can only be used for people in need.
Yeah.
which is so important.
And it's important. It's important to note, and I always make this qualification: the Grace Fund goes to people in need. That should be separate from your giving to the church. And so don't think that if you're giving to the Grace Fund, you're giving to the church. No, the Grace Fund is something separate that we administer as kind of Christ's resources to help people both in the church and outside the church. We have stipulations around it, and we have qualifications on it. Any of those Mike can provide for you. But I want you to know that the church is really meeting the needs of our church community, our body at Goodwill Church, and far beyond. And so this is an incredible opportunity for us right now. I want to pray to close us, Mike. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm here to help.
We give you thanks and praise, God, for what you're doing in this day. We don't like these times. We would not have chosen these times, but we see that even in the midst of these times, you are doing your work. You are building your church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against her. And so, Lord, I pray specifically today with Mike for the financial peace, for the financial security, for the financial stability of all those watching, all those that are part of the Goodwill Church community and the greater Hudson Valley community that we are privileged to serve in. I pray, God, that you would help us to be financially sound so that we as followers of Christ can do your work, recognizing that everything that we have, everything that we have the possession of is a gift from you. It comes from you. It belongs to you. And so thank you for this. We want to steward well your resources because you are God and you are good. Use us deeply, powerfully, profoundly to help people in need, that we might declare your goodness to all people. We thank you for this time. Seal it now, Holy Spirit, that we might act upon it now, according to your will. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Again, the information for Mike is online at our website, goodwillchurch.org. You can email him there, and you can also call the church office, 845-457-5959, 845-457-5959. Well, God bless you, and we hope that this was valuable for you, and we look forward to bringing you more content in the future that will help us all together to navigate these challenging times. God bless you and be well.